As I told you when we started, we couldn't possibly have a session on mentorship without Fran Cook. Fran is one of the most appreciated and respected professors in the school and beyond, and I would like to kindly ask him for his thoughts and remarks in closing this session.
If David Hunter were here and introducing me, he'd list the number of papers, the research papers that I co-authored with Dimitri. And I can tell you, honestly, it was zero. I did not have Dimitri as a mentor, so I cannot share the stories that were just told so admirably about a person who is probably the best mentor a student could have. And when Pagona asked me to speak at this occasion, I immediately said yes, because all of us would do anything for Dimitrios. And I suspect all of us would say yes also because they would welcome the opportunity to say a few words about Dimitrios. So that's why I'm here. Now, you've heard a lot about Dimitrios as the giant among researchers, the giant among mentors. I think it's only right that before we end this wonderful day of celebrating the life of Dimitri, that we give acknowledgement to a few other very important contributions he gave to our school, and especially to our department. One, as a leader of the department, and as an active member, faculty member of that department, and two, mention at least how highly rated he put education and teaching epidemiology. So first, let me talk a bit about the leadership role of Dimitri. As was mentioned today, this department essentially began with Brian McMahon. Brian was the chair for 31 years of the Department of Epidemiology. When Brian was stepping down in the very late 80s, it was logical that Dimitri would take his place. Dimitri and Brian were close friends, close collaborators, as you saw today on a number of research projects. If anyone could continue the vision that Brian put into this department, Dimitri would be the person. And he did that, even today. Our department shares some of those same characteristics as the department when I was a student. Strong research methods, being developed and being taught. Strong research in chronic disease, epidemiology, including cancer, as admirably displayed by a few of the previous speakers. But Dimitri also laid the foundation for change. The department today is different from the department of Brian. It's larger in terms of number of research areas, larger in terms of number of faculty, larger in terms of number of students, larger in terms of number of degree opportunities, all of which I think can be, in part at least, contributed to the early work that Dimitrios did as chairman of our department. Now, 2 years ago, Dimitrios spoke at the first Cutter Symposium. It was a symposium in honor of us celebrating 100 years as a school of public health. And we were displaying the great work and the great contributions done by the Department of Epidemiology. In my opinion, the highlight of the day was when Dimitri spoke in the afternoon. What you might not know is probably Dimitri didn't want to be there. A close friend of his had a family emergency. Dimitri would rather have been with that close friend. But out of admiration for our department, he spoke, and I think he did an admirable job, repeating a number of times, reminding us that he was 75 years old, but still an active member of our department. I have two quotes from his talk that I just want to mention today. One was he described the history of the department, laying praises on what Brian McMahon did as his predecessor as chairman, and then laying praises on the successes of him as chairman. Alec, Mayer, Hans Olaf, Michelle. He spent only a minute or so talking about his tenure as chair of our Department of Epidemiology, and he described himself as a low-key leader who fostered the department's collective efforts. That was his summary of his role as chair of our department, a low-key leader who fastened the department's collective efforts. Now, we've heard today that there's nothing low-key about Dimitrios in terms of his research accomplishments. And this afternoon, nothing low-key in his abilities as a mentor to our students. But I think we can also say there was nothing low-key about Dimitri as chairman of our department. He was a tremendous chair of our department. And as far as his quote of fostering the department's collective efforts, we know his style. If Dimitri wanted you to do something, you would meet with him and he would say, first, how inappropriate it would be for him to try to do this. He didn't have the knowledge. He didn't have the experience. He couldn't do a good job at this. But you would be the perfect person. You had all these skills. I mean, at one time I said, Dimitri, I have to roll up my pants. It's too late to save my shoes. And he didn't know what I was talking about. But that was Dimitri. He was humble, and he got people to work together by asking and get the most out of people, as his mentee said, not by forcing them to do things, but by slowly talking them into being involved and getting the best out of everyone. That, I think, is a sign of a great leader. So Dimitri was by no means a low-key leader. Mentioning his method of laying praises is one other story I have to tell you. One time I mentioned, we should get Julie Burring involved in this project also. And immediately he started laying praises about Julie Burring, how she's a great teacher, she's a great mentor for students, she is wonderful and wonderful. And then she ended by saying, and do you know that she's half Greek? Okay, so I bid on that, and Tasso, you're going to like this. I said, okay, Dimitri, what half of Julie is Greek? And he smiled and he said, the best half. Okay. The other quote I want to read to you that came out of that symposium 2 years ago is Dimitrios described as his greatest accomplishment as chair was to manage to promote everyone who was ready to be promoted. Okay. I have to say thank you for Dimitrios for doing that. I think I was one of the people who benefited from that. But I would say that carried over of supporting people wasn't just for his faculty. We heard about his support for his mentors. He was a strong supporter of our students. Our faculty knows that every year we give a qualifying exam. And every year we meet to discuss who's passing the exam and who's not passing the exam. And every year there might be one person on the bubble. Well, we don't know what to do with that person. Dimitrios was always the strongest advocate for that student, building a very convincing argument for why we should pass that person. And as we know, and as these ladies would attest, it's very difficult to disagree and to say no to anything that Dimitri says. Okay, let me say a few words about teaching. Dimitri valued the role of teaching epidemiology. He co-edited a book on teaching epidemiology. It's in its 4th edition. I borrowed Pagona's and Dimitri's copy a couple of weeks ago to see who was contributing that book, and many people in this audience have written chapters. I bet he laid the same convincing argument on them, that he could not write a chapter describing how to teach this particular area of epidemiology as well as they could, and getting people to contribute to this text. But Dimitri was a firm supporter of teaching, of epidemiology teaching. And to build on something that Bert Hoffman said this morning, Dimitri was one of the strongest supporters for teaching clinical epidemiology, teaching epidemiology methods to clinicians, because he saw that as a future horizon of epidemiology, namely doing research within the hospital settings, outcomes research as it's called today. Now, Dimitri was not just a supporter in terms of saying, I agree we should do this, and he was actively involved. He would plan his summer trip to Boston with Pagona to hold meetings, workshops with students, physicians taking our summer courses. He would meet with them one-on-one in the afternoon to discuss their research projects. He was a firm believer and also a practitioner in teaching epidemiology. What you might not know is that the very first non-traditional degree program at Harvard University came under the support of Dimitri. When he was chair, he supported our movement to develop a summer-only Masters of Science in Epidemiology to train mostly clinicians in the research methods for doing clinical epidemiology. Dimitri was the person who led the support for that at the school and probably gave me the greatest support at the school for developing that program. Now, the last thing I want to say is you mentioned Dimitri's work ethics. I used, and you actually mentioned his parking space. In recent years, his parking space was on the parking lot behind Contway Library on Huntington Avenue. So on my daily trips from the Brigham and Women's Hospital to the School of Public Health, I would pass that parking lot, and I'd always look to see if the Toyota Tercel was parked in that parking lot. Dimitrios had maybe the last person in the world who owned a Toyota Tercel. Okay. But that being there was a sign that Dimitrios was in. And I would immediately go up to the 9th floor, and not surprisingly, his door would be shut. He would be working. But if you knocked on his door, he'd open up and he'd stop everything to greet you and to invite you in and to chat for a few minutes. He was that type of a guy. He was a giant in research who treated everybody as if they were special. So I'd like, on behalf of myself, other members of our faculty, other members of our school, to thank Antonia, Pagona, and the other faculty from the University of Athens for sharing Dimitrios with us. We were truly favored to have him as a friend and a colleague.
Well, Fran, you beat me to it. A couple of you heard mention, Rula said this about the couch. I thought I might share a little bit of a story with you about the couch. Any of you who've been in Dimitrios' office will know about that couch. And I don't know, is Mary McMahon still here? That couch belonged to Dimitrios' mentor, Brian McMahon. And Dimitrios made me make a promise that I have worked really hard to keep. He made me promise in my first year of being the chair in the department that I preserve that couch, because that couch was very important. And when Lisa joined the department and we were rearranging offices, I said, Lisa, I need your help. You have a big office. I think the couch belongs in your office, and she happily took it. But for family reasons, she had to move back to Bethesda. And then I had the couch problem all over again. And I really couldn't break my promise because this was a promise that Dimitrios made me make, and I understood the legacy of the commitment of one mentee to a mentor. And I count myself as a mentee to Dimitrios, and so there are 3 generations tied to this couch, maybe more. And so one of the first tasks I gave my department administrator was, you're going to have to help me find a way to institutionalize this couch. And there was a little bit of space on the 5th floor outside of the space where Mark Lipschitz's team, their Midas team, has space. And it's an awkwardly shaped space on the 5th floor. But Epi was about to take over all of the 5th floor, and so we said, well, you know, I think the fire marshals might approve if we put the couch up against the wall and we put some more furnishing in that space. And we put a photograph of Dimitrios. And as a tribute to Dimitrios' mentor, Brian McMahon, as Fran said, the founder of the department in modern times, and as a tribute to Dimitrios, we created a student lounge space on the 5th floor. And thanks to David Vaughn's help, that couch is in good stead for as long as Kresge's standing. So I just wanted to tell you the story of that couch. It has probably been my biggest challenge as chair in the department. Fran beat me to the punch in thanking Antonia. Antonia, for as long as I've known her, and I've known her for years through Dimitrios' story of you, Antonia, and through reading your papers on the Mediterranean diet, you always insisted on staying in the background. But I think today, as we celebrate Dimitrios, and as Fran thanks you for sharing him with us, and I would say thank you and all of your colleagues in Athens who had to share Dimitrios with us for decades. I'd like to offer a special recognition for your contributions in both being a partner and a spouse to a person that we love dearly. So could you please just come up? We wanted to give you this award in recognition of your indirect contributions and direct contributions to Dimitrios' service to our department and also these flowers. Would you like to say a few words? I'll hold this for you.
On behalf of my Greek colleagues, I want to express my thanks for accepting Dimitrios in your family, in the Boston family of Harvard. We have been proud all these years because Dimitrios was very happy being here. That's why, and I have been most of my time in Greece, but knowing that he was so happy being with you here, you know, I shared him with you. Thank you for having him and my Greek colleagues, and I hope that this relation will continue in the future with all of us in Greece. Thank you very much. More specifically, Michelle.
I want to thank all of our moderators, our speakers, our panelists, and I want to thank Murray Middleman for reading Hans Olaf's terrific tribute to Dimitrios. And now I'd like to thank David Vaughn, who is the Epidemiology Department Administrator and a true partner in helping us put on this symposium today. David reminded me this morning that he'd only known Dimitrios for 2 months. And that's really unfortunate. I think I count myself among those having the gift of knowing Dimitrios for many years. But I will tell you that David put his back into helping us put together this truly fantastic symposium, and I'd like to recognize his contributions. Would you like to come up? And as a department administrator, people will hear me say my team. Every time they say something good about the department, it's really my team that deserves the credit. And this is the team captain. And so I'm going to ask David to recognize all of the members of the team who contributed to this event.
Thank you, Michelle. So thank you very much. Even though I did know Dimitrios for a very short period of time, he was touched my heart. He was a very inspiring man, and I feel myself very fortunate for knowing him, even for the few months that I did know him. I do want to thank my team, Kapilia, for helping out, and Zenon for helping out, as well as there's also some of the team in the back. So Randall to the back left against the back wall, and Sherida to his right, as well as Rocky. And then a few others, Jill McDonald, who was here this morning, giving out your registration badges, Eric DiGiovanni as well, and Megan Marchese, who is also here this morning. So that was our team that helped put this amazing event together. So without them, I definitely would not have been able to do it without their help and support. So thank you all, and have a great day. And I thought it was a wonderful day, so feel free. There's a reception out here. Help yourself and some violinists, and enjoy some wine and spirits and stories. Thank you.